Hello, and welcome back to Healing Mama Podcast. I am Healing Mama, aka Val, and I want to start off by again thanking everyone for listening. Thank you for taking some time to log in today and join me in episode 4, which is setting boundaries. So I've been pretty excited about this one. A lot of people are nervous about setting boundaries, and I totally get it. I've been there. I've done that. Still doing it today. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Today's quote is, "When you set clear boundaries, you honor yourself and protect your energy from being drained by tasks, people, or situations that don't serve your greatest and highest good." I relate to this quote. I have had tons of situations or people throughout my life where they are energy drainers, and I don't think people know that they're energy draining or energy dumping or emotion dumping. But I have had numerous times where I have let people just emotion dump on me, and they hang up and they're feeling better at the end of the call. They're feeling great because they got it all out. But guess who received it? I did. I, in turn, accepted that call. So I took on that energy. I took on that emotion dumping, and it left me feeling drained to the point to where people around me could see it. My husband would see it and say, "Hey, you got off the phone with this person, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I can tell, like, you just looked so drained, so tired." And it really does drain you. So setting boundaries is a way to no longer accept that. And I feel like a lot of us are intimidated or afraid of setting those boundaries because in the back of our minds, we don't want to hurt people's feelings. A lot of us are people pleasers, and we think to ourselves, if I set this boundary, I'm going to lose this person. And sometimes that is the case. But if you lose that person because you set that boundary, then that person wasn't meant for you. Because somebody who loves you and is meant to be in your life is going to be able to respect those boundaries, respect the fact that you're saying, "Hey, I just can't do this anymore for my own well-being. I can't do this anymore. I can't listen. I can't let you emotion dump on me." And so being able to realize that is a healthy thing. It's something that does come with time. And when I started setting boundaries, I was terrified. I told myself, if I set this boundary, then I am going to lose people. And I'll get into, when I set boundaries, how I set boundaries, who I set boundaries with. Sometimes it's even setting boundaries with yourself. And like I said, some people are just so negative and energy draining, and I don't think that they know that they're that way. So it's not anything towards them specifically because they don't know that they're doing it. Really, I feel like when I got into setting boundaries and working on myself and realizing that I was being affected by a ton of things, I was so scared of losing people. I'm so scared of saying, "Hey, I can't do this." And then them telling me, "Well, then don't talk to me," or "I don't want you in my life." For example, the first person that I set a boundary with was my father. So him and I have had again and off again relationship communication wise. And we butt heads a lot of the times because in some ways we are very similar. And so, I would talk to my dad, check in with him, see how he was doing. And there would be a lot of times where he would say things about my mom or a family member who, I love dearly. And so if you are bashing somebody that I love, that does upset me. That does make me feel some type of way. And so I am being resentful and holding a grudge because I was letting him do that. So in a way, I'm almost setting him up to fail, right? He has no idea how I'm feeling because every time he says this, I'm keeping my mouth shut and I'm not saying anything because I don't want to ruffle any feathers. I don't want to cause any waves, but it's angering me. And so I'm in turn being resentful and like snappy at him. And he's like, "Hey, what's going on? Like, I don't understand. Where's this energy coming from?" But I was afraid to set boundaries because I was like, hey, me and my dad are already so rocky that if I tell him I don't like this, like I'm going to lose him. And growing up with my daddy issues, I was scared to lose him because I always wanted to have my dad in my life and I always wanted to please him and I wanted him to be happy and I wanted him to love me. Until I came to the conclusion and to the realization that I have to love myself first. And if he cannot respect my boundaries, or if he cannot respect the fact that, hey, something's bothering me and I need to get it off my chest, and I tell him and he leaves, then so be it. Because I come first. And as a people pleaser, I didn't want to set those boundaries because I was terrified that I was going to lose my dad. And so, like I said, he, would mention my mom or my family, people that I loved, and that really, really bothered me. And so one day I just remember telling him like, hey, like, I'm going to tell you something. You're probably not going to like this, but I have to get it off my chest. And so I basically told him, hey, when you talk about my mom or you talk about this person, it really upsets me. And I don't want to have that conversation with you. I don't want you're no longer able to talk about those people. You can ask me how they're doing, but if you're going to bash them or talk about them in a negative way, then I will hang up or I won't have that conversation with you. And he didn't like it. He was like, you're telling me what I can and cannot say. And I was like, 100% I am. I'm telling you that if you wish to have a conversation with me and, we can talk and we can do all that. But the moment that you mention the people I love, I will not have it. And so I was terrified and he did not like it. And more often than not, people aren't going to like it, but they don't need to. They don't have to like it because it's not a matter of you pleasing them anymore. It's a matter of making sure that you're taking care of yourself. And so he said, okay, well, I don't really like that you're doing this, but I'll give it a try. I will try to respect you. And I did tell him, at the end of the day, it's about respect for myself, you respecting me. And in turn, setting these boundaries, it'll help us have a better relationship. And so he did pretty good for a while until, he was in a funk and in a mood. And when he would get mad, he would test these boundaries. So I would remind him like, hey, we've set these boundaries. Like, don't cross them, because then in turn, you're telling me, hey, I already know that you set this boundary, but since I'm feeling some type of way, I'm not going to respect it and I'm going to say whatever I want. So then that in turn tells me you don't give a shit. You don't care about my boundaries. You don't care about the fact that we already had this conversation and I told you that it makes me feel some type of way. I always say this. When somebody shows you their true colors, believe them because they're telling you the truth. And so if you set that boundary in somebody and you let them, because sometimes it's a matter of setting boundaries. And sometimes that boundary might be, hey, I love you. We're not good for each other. We're not healthy for each other. So I'm going to have to love you from a distance. And other times it's setting a boundary and saying, hey, I'm still going to give you this chance. Like, I still want to give you the opportunity to show me that you respect me, to show me that you can listen to my feelings and respect my feelings and not cross that line. And so I gave him that opportunity. I gave him that chance. And so, like I said, he would kind of test it from time to time and I would remind him. And, looking back, I probably shouldn't have given him as many opportunities to test the limits as I did, because lo and behold, a few months or a year later, it all just kind of shit hit the fan is what it was. So, we had a conversation and he was feeling some type of way and he had been going through some things, but just because you're going through things doesn't give you the right to disrespect me in any kind of way. We all go through things. And sometimes, we say or we do things that we don't mean, but when you do it on a continuous basis, that just tells me that you don't have a respect for me. So, we had a conversation, he was going through it, and then he really just turned into bashing everybody that I love. And so I stopped him and I said, hey, you know what? I'm not going to have this conversation with you. I've given you several warnings and I'm not going to have it. If you cannot respect my boundaries, then we don't need to be in each other's lives, because I will not take disrespect. And I hung up on him. I am all for hanging up. Like, I know that drives people nuts, and I know that people feel disrespected by it. But if the person that is disrespecting you feels disrespected that you hung up, so be it. You're protecting your energy. And again, people are energy drainers. So a lot of the times these people want to just fight and go back and forth with you. So you have to hang up the phone, because if you don't, it's going to be an endless conversation of negativity, of leaving you drained, of disrespect. So protect your energy. I'm all for hanging up. If you tell somebody like, hey, you've already crossed the line, like, let's not do this, and they still keep going, it is pointless, and there's no need for you to stay on the phone with them. So I've set those boundaries. Like I said, I was terrified of losing my dad, and to be quite honest with you, 100% real, because this is what I'm doing on this podcast. I am sharing my true story, no filter. Him and I do not speak. To this day, we don't communicate, we don't conversate. I blocked him because I need to make sure that I'm protecting myself. I'm protecting my energy. I'm protecting my boundaries. And one of my triggers growing up was not being respected. And allow him to be in my life because I'm afraid of losing him, but I have issues and my trigger is not being respected, then I am hurting myself over and over when I have the key to fix that. My key is separating myself. As much as I want to have a relationship with my dad, as much as I do love him, I do love my dad. We're just not good for each other. We're not able to have that relationship to where it's healthy. And maybe one day we will, maybe one day we won't. But that is something that I have come to terms with. And I've had to grieve, in a sense, the fact that I won't, or that I don't at this moment have that relationship with my father. But I come first and I need to heal. And so if I have somebody that's disrespecting me continuously, there is no healing. I go back to the feeling of a little child who feels abandoned, who feels alone, who feels not good enough, who's being bashed. And that is not where I'm at in my life at this point. And I really just want to heal. And so setting these boundaries works. And I promise you, once you start to set these boundaries, it gets easier. I've had to set boundaries with my mom, with my friends. I have a best friend who, him and I, we always used to banter, go back and forth. And when I began this journey of healing, as much as it was hard for me, it was honestly hard for him as well, because he was so used to this toxic version of me, to where I partook in a lot of the crap that, would go back and forth. And so once I started to become, aware of everything that I was doing and how I was setting myself up into these situations, I started to kind of drift myself away from that. And I started to set boundaries. So he was like, are you like, you're telling me I can't say this? And I would tell him, like, I'm telling you, you're entitled to feel how you feel. But if you're saying something that's being disrespectful or that's hurting me, like, I will cut off the conversation. And so we've had to get into this new stage in our friendship where we're setting boundaries. He in turn has set boundaries with me, telling me how he feels. I have to respect how he feels, even if I don't feel the same way. Boundaries aren't about the other person on the other side. I don't have to agree with your boundaries, but if I want to stay in your life and I love you, I need to respect them. So we've come to this part in our relationship, our friendship, where we're communicating at a level that we've never communicated. And sometimes they're not so much heated, but he's agitated, I'm agitated. And so, we give each other that space, and he's like, hey, can I say this? And I'm like, 100% you can say this. And so he'll set his boundaries, I'll set my boundaries, and it's still something that we're getting used to. It's still something that we're adjusting to. And I would think really having those deal breakers and allowing people no longer to drain you, allowing people to not disrespect you. And a deal breaker is, hey, even if it's a family member that is causing you to feel this some type of way, that you set those deal breakers with them. You're open and honest with yourself. And if you're afraid to start setting those boundaries and you're afraid to dive into that conversation with them, write it out first. Write it out on a journal. Hey, when you say this or you do this, it bothers me. It really hurts me. And these are the boundaries that I feel would help me. So if you can respect these boundaries, then I feel like our relationship could be that much better. And take that paper, and if you feel like you're ready, read that paper to them. It doesn't have to be something that you're winging. It could be something that you've taken some time to think about, you've wrote about it, you've journaled about it, and now you're ready to lay your cards out on the table. And again, be prepared. Sometimes you might lose somebody. Other times they might respect you at that point and say, hey, you know what? Okay, I don't agree, but okay. And you give them that opportunity. And sometimes they will abide by those boundaries. Other times they won't care. They'll show you a little bit like, okay, like I'm trying, I'm not going to, like they're walking on eggshells. And at the end of the day, if somebody feels like they're walking on eggshells because you set a boundary, so be it. Because you can only allow people to treat you a certain way. So if somebody is used to disrespecting you, every time that they come and they talk to you, more often than not, it's going to be disrespectful. So you're, in a sense, training these people to give you what you need. And in turn, you're giving that back to them. So really, really setting your limits, setting those deal breakers. And there's different reasons for setting boundaries. Emotional dumping is one. I've had it to where people call me and I will be on the phone with them for an hour and a half. And in total, I've maybe said 20 words. They're just telling me, hey, life sucks. I feel this way. My job's not going okay. My health is like this. And just draining all the energy I have. But I allowed myself to be in that call for an hour and a half, an hour and 20 minutes, whatever the case was. And so if you are doing that, eventually you're going to run dry, and those people aren't filling that cup up. Look at it as a glass of water. And right now your glass is full, right? And somebody comes and they're talking to you, and just think that, you know, as they're talking to you, that water is going down slowly but surely. And so that water is going down, as water's going down. And at the end of the conversation, they've left you empty. And they're not pouring back into you. They're not pouring back into, hey, you know, what do you feel like? How's life going with you? You know, it's not reciprocated. And so you're left empty. You're responsible for keeping that cup full and filling your own cup. So if you have relationships, or you're in a relationship where you are being drained and that energy is not reciprocated and they're not filling your cup, then that's not healthy. Then there's somebody who's always argumentative, like somebody who just calls you and they're already saying stuff. They already want to fight with you. That's another way of draining your energy. If you choose to allow that person to do that to you continuously, like I said earlier, it's just something that you're just showing them, you're teaching them that they can do to you. So setting that boundary. And so in setting boundaries, tell them you need to set the boundary and that they don't have to agree with it, because you're doing it for yourself, your own mental health, your own physical wellness, because draining your energy in turn does make you sick. And I don't think people realize that to an extent. If your energy is drained, you're stressed out, you are lowering your vibration, and in turn, your body is not where it needs to be. So you're more capable of getting sick. You're stressing out your hormones, and you're not in a homeostasis mindset. And so that's the level that you always want to maintain, is your body should be in homeostasis. And we can get into that in another podcast as well. But talk to them about the terms of your boundaries and let them know that if they cannot or will not respect that boundary, then you must respectfully go separate ways, because you are taking care of you. But you always come first. You should not put yourself in harm's way for gratification of others or fear of losing others. And it's a nice feeling when you start to set your boundaries. You know, you're scared at first, but you're like, wow, I did it. I am so proud of myself. And you're like, I can do this again, because you start to see if somebody who loves you and you set that boundary and you see that they're respecting that, you're like, okay, this is what healthy looks like. and this is what's good for me. And you want more of that healthy. You want more of that pouring back into you type of relationship. And I promise you, once you get in the habit of setting those boundaries and not allowing people to cross them, you start to make it a practice in your life. And it's not something that comes easy. Your life will get better as you start to prioritize your own well-being. And sometimes it's even boundaries with your kids. And that one's scary because, you can't walk away from your kids. But it is setting boundaries with your kids on, hey, when we were talking about this the other day, you said something and that was really disrespectful, or it really hurt my feelings. Can we talk about it? And talking to your kid and saying, hey, by you saying this, it hurt my feelings. I want to set a boundary, and I want to tell you, you're no longer allowed to say that. Setting boundaries is a part of healing, and healing your inner child and healing your wounds and telling little you're going to be okay. I'm going to protect you. I'm not going to let others hurt you. And I got you. You're safe with me. And protecting little you. And that's the journey that I'm on, I'm on the journey of protecting little Val. And, I didn't grow up feeling that protection. I didn't grow up feeling that love. I didn't grow up feeling that respect. So now that I know what those issues were when I was younger, I have the key or the keys to heal little me, to protect little me, to keep me safe and to be better. And so setting a boundary or setting boundaries is 100% a part of that. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you want to talk about boundaries, you're like, hey, Valerie, you know what? I'm not ready to tell somebody that I need to set a boundary, but I want to practice or I want to talk about it. Can we chat? 100%. Again, you can always reach out to me in my socials. If you're going through something and you're scared to talk about it and you don't want judgment, reach out to me in my socials. That's what I'm here for. That's the goal of this podcast. Is I want to share my story. I want to let people know that they're not alone. If you don't have somebody that you feel you could talk to, you can talk to me. We can kind of work through these things together, and step by step, whatever I know and I've learned throughout the process of my healing journey, then I am more than happy to share with you. And at the end of the day, that's what this is about: healing and protecting yourself and creating a better you. I have this affirmation that I tell myself: the better it gets, the better it gets. And it's simple, but in all reality, it's true. The better your healing is, the better your life gets. And so with that, I will wrap up this episode. Again, try to keep all of the episodes under 30 minutes. Next week, I have a fun one for you. I will have my husband join. We'll talk about, how we met and how my healing journey has affected him, the struggles that we've gone through. I figured we would do that for the next episode since it is coming up on Valentine's Day. And I would love for you to get some insight, from my husband on my healing and what he thinks of it, and, what changes have occurred from his side, and share our story. So I am so excited for that episode. It will be fun to have him on. And I just want to thank everyone for listening. I hope you have an amazing day. I send you so much love, peace, joy, and happiness. And until next time, I hope you have a great one. Bye.